Hello, everyone. I guess hopefully you're having a wonderful day. We are back again with another PWCC/Fanatics weekly review where I go through the top 100 soccer items auction off this week. As always, if you enjoyed the videos, do make sure to leave a like. Would appreciate it greatly. With that said, let's go ahead and hop on over. So we've hopped on over there, and $126 to get into this weekly. I'll try to go through things that I don't care too much about. Like this row doesn't interest me basically at all. Some random autos. We have a Leaf, whatever patch. Beyond that, we see the superstars Diego Maradona go a decent bit. This one in a PSA 7 does 126. We have a Lothar Matthäus, not a rookie, says rookie, but it's second year, so it's close. Foil, which not easy in this grade. Pop one of 8.6 higher. Okay number there. This Benzema goes for 132, presumably fake. We can look at the back, and yes, it is. At least so it appears. Then we have a 1993 Abril Rivaldo, PSA 5 going for 132. Haven't seen a lot of these lately. There was a time where they were, flowing pretty decently, but this is the first one I've seen go in a while. Beyond that, we have a Fusion Messi along with a sort of promo oversized item for Cruyff. This row, nothing all too interesting. These Kylian Mbappe bases are down a decent bit. Those were lingering closer to 200 for a little bit. And then the man goes for 144 in the orange out of 75, or I guess that's rose gold. Pardon me. Christian Pulisic goes for 144 in a purple PSA 10 from 2017 Chrome. We have the UK Traditions Ronaldo for 144. The Messi goes for quite a high mark above that. We'll see that one later. It says mislabeled by PSA. I guess, yeah, this has 2004 back here on this slab. Now 2006, but still sort of a weird release nonetheless. This sort of Top Shot, which is the first thing I knew Top Shot for was this, which is the R9, not rookie, but like second year. Typically the cheapest sort of early R9 you can find because it's sort of like a POG and you can pull them out of the album that they were supposed to be in or whatever it is. It's weird, but PSA 9 seemingly not all that easy considering the edges, corners. I mean, basically die cut. So Stevie G Auto 150. We have the Sicker Verlag Gerard that sort of caught my eye. You don't see many of these in high grade, or at least I haven't, in these auctions, and this would be why. Basically, last PSA 5 sold for 115 on a fixed price on eBay, which was about 4 months ago, and closer to 5. And this auction goes for a good bit higher than that in a grade lower. So this was a really good sale. Last PSA 4 down here was $33. This one goes for 150. So quite the move there on that one. It is a really nice looking molar, I will say. Also Pop 103 just too higher, so maybe it's also hard to find. I'm not sure. German stuff just in general seems relatively easy when it comes to vintage, but it seems like a good price there. Above that we have a Puskás sort of signed photo. He's kicking, I think, a penalty there, but I'm not quite sure. On the lower end of what these tend to do, it's like 150 to 250, so within the range, but on the lower side of it. The Seedorf PSA 7 goes for 168, Pop 1 of 2.4 higher. It might be low compared to some others. I'm not quite sure. I mean, for the pop, it would seem kind of low because I do see these go pretty high sometimes. But at the same time, I always sort of mentally compare to R9, and I think that this is a fair price. R9 would do a lot more, but at the same time, rightfully so, I would say. I mean, Seedorf, good player, but not on the same caliber, especially collectability-wise. CR7 here goes for 174 and an SGC 9. We then have a plastic back Saim Pele from 62 that goes for 180 in a PSA 2. Beyond that, PSA 4 Maradona 82 sticker goes for 186. Not a great grade there, so I think that that's a decent price. Always impressed by how low Endrick Leaf autos do. You get rookie Endrick autos, but they can only do 192 despite, everyone else being able to make much more of it. And I don't know if this was the first use of parallel tops now. It might have been. If people know, feel free to correct me, but this feels like it might have been. I sort of remember the days, but yeah, I mean, this is $200, and Jude sort of held up his end of the bargain in terms of becoming the star he was promised to be. If that continues or not, I guess we'll see, but so far, so good, and the price isn't crazy. It's still a good price. I mean, $200 for tops now, but compared to Yamal, different echelon. We then have a couple autos here with a Pedri along with a Cafu and Pele. This PSA 9 of the Benzema Blue 2014, I wanted to look up because you don't see a lot of 2014 Prism colors, especially of the niche stars. So basically, anytime I can find them, I'd love to look them up. This one was such a good sale that it actually triggered an eBay bin. So someone saw this sell for $200 last night on the Fanatics Weekly, and then immediately went on over to eBay and got one for $160. So good on them. Save a few bucks and get the same card. But yeah, compared to some past prices, this was a pretty good sale. Man, I thought I had it all narrowed down, but yeah, I guess in the past, this raw one did 77. You have this PSA 8 that did 30 last year, so I mean, like kind of goes to show. 2014 isn't easy to grade, so a 9 to an 8 probably warrants some sort of premium, but this generally was, closer to 50 to 100 in a PSA 9, and now nearly 200. I lost this one. I didn't really take a stab at it. I did initially, but this is a BVG 5 Sticker Verlag Pele. This is, at least as far as I'm aware, the true quote-unquote Cruyff rookie set. The Palarex is more preferred because it looks better and it isn't a panel, so I get that. But I sort of wanted to go after the Pele. I was like, oh, 5.5, so I was going to try to go after it. It was pretty low on the last day and ended up getting pushed a bit higher. But what scared me off of this is I actually looked at the back after I placed a low bid, and then I was like, yeah, I'm not bidding anymore, because BVG 5.5, I mean, typically people assume like a grade or two lower PSA is about what you're looking at. But yeah, I mean, this would seemingly be a 1 or 2 at PSA, considering it looks removed. I mean, you got this down here, you got this up here, but PSA is also not the best at being able to detect that all the time. So maybe that gets through, but in my mind, that was a 1 or a 2, and PSA 1/2s go for like 50 to 100, so this seems like a pretty good price. Yellow, red, Pulsar Messi goes for 200. We have an Erling Haaland Leaf that goes for 200 as well, 228. Kind of a low sale here on this PSA 4 Michel Platini that goes for 234. We also have a 65 Panini Calciatore Pele and a PSA 3 that goes for the same price. Always love the look of this one. Really nice colors and early Panini Calciatore. This Jadon Sancho's a fun one to dig into. I was just sort of interested, and he's sort of, I think he's got to move to Chelsea at this point, so he's been on quite the ride, and so have his prices. So this one sells for $252. Last one raw at $227, so it's around the same price. That was just a few days ago. And then before that, we have a PSA 10 that did $203, and then a PSA 10 before that did $100. So this has been quite the revival, just because he fell off so hard. Now, if I go all the way back, it's going to be scary stuff, but just prepare with me here. Yeah, first sale I can find here is, what is this, 2020, July 30th for $6,400 on a BGS 9.5. So he had quite the fall. To see a PSA 10 then go for 100, 3.5 years later, that's quite a fall from grace. Given that, it does allow for some room to rebound, and that's sort of what we're seeing here. I mean, if a PSA 9 is going for $252, you would assume a 10 probably gets like 500 to 1,000, probably closer to 500, but you don't know. So up a lot. I think this is something people could take note of. I mean, I think that this is the route a lot of prospects will follow in soccer, and I think that whether or not you're looking for that guy or you're maybe looking at the prospects, it's important, because I think a lot of people look at these prospects and say, well, they're just going to have this steady up and straight, and their career is just going to get better and better and better. And sure, to an extent it will, but there's going to be tons of dips and valleys along the way for these different players. So being able to buy into a dip like that, obviously, seems like a pretty good idea. Now, at the same time, if you bought into a dip when it was, say, 6K and you were like, oh, it's only 1K now, that's a dip. Well, you got murdered. So yeah, I mean, dangerous game, but I did see people sort of clowning Slabstocks / Andrew whenever he posted that this could be a good buy at 200. He had posted some sort of graph back here around when it was bottoming and it kicked back up as he went to Dortmund. I think it was like 100 and then maybe a 9 sold for more than this or something, and he was just sort of making note of it, and he was like, oh, maybe it could go up more, and everyone in the comments was just killing him. They're saying it can't go up more. Jadon Sancho sucks. He's a bust, and it's gone up a fair bit more. I think people just need to be patient, but at the same time, I don't think a lot of people want to be patient, especially when prospecting. So yeah, I think that's a good sign, a fun one to see, and cool to dig into. Beyond that, we have a Sadia 68 Pele. I haven't seen this before, I don't think, at all. So typically Pele's that you don't see all too often are going to do an okay number, just because there's a lot of people set collecting Pele or just player collecting Pele and set registry and all that stuff. But does 252. This Dixie Dean from 28 does 252 as well. Pop 146 higher, so fairly low pop for early Dixie Dean. This was seemingly a pretty good buy, at least relative to what we'll see in the rows above, but this one does 264 and a BGS 7. We have an Erling Haaland sticker along with a Kylian Mbappe silver and a BCCG. I've never seen one of those. I don't think I've seen a BCCG in this entire time we've done these. So that's pretty impressive. That's usually something that is reserved for maybe junk wax or stuff of that sort. Like I see them around in that, but never here. Beyond that, 2004 BGS 8 goes for 300 here. I think this again was a good buy. I think these Messis at 2 to 300 are decent buys. Just because you go on eBay, you can't find any for 2 to 300. I think that on the auction houses, it's much more true price, but on eBay, you just don't really see them because I think there's so many eyeballs for this type of stuff on eBay. Relatively over here, I don't think there's as much, and I think that's a pretty good deal in terms of getting a foil Messi BGS 8. How that crosses, if you want to cross it, I don't know, but seems low relative, again, to what is going on eBay. 95 Vuntball R9, always love this sticker, goes for $288, a PSA 6. These Hollands used to be like $800 all the time, sort of dropped to $4, and now they're sort of down to $3, seemingly getting lower and lower, although it seems like his other stuff has started to rebound a little bit. This sort of base stuff is taking a bit longer. I know this is a Sapphire, but still base. Unlimited Potential Mbappe PSA 10 goes for $324. This is sort of what I was comparing to earlier. This is a BGS 7 that goes for $324. I'd much rather get the green for, $60 less, but we have a PSA 3 of the Mundo Deportivo R9 that goes for $360. Leaf Erling Haaland, again, we have a PSA 3 Swedish record. This seemed really light too. I would say throughout most of this, a lot of things seem really good, but some of this more plentiful pre-modern / vintage seemingly not doing amazing. This record, Pele, goes for $400, and that's a super cheap price. We don't see a lot of low-grade records sort of sell, at least as of late, especially Pele by himself. I think this is one of the least preferred in the sense that, you don't have Garrincha with him, you don't have really any border on it, although if I'm getting a single, I don't really want the border because the middle part won't have the border anyway, so it just looks weird. All that to say, I think that's a, pretty cheap price, and like an entry Pele rookie, it's about as cheap as you can get it, and, I like it more than, say, the Gazzetta. So, Bruguera Kubala, this goes in a PSA 9 for $408, pop 1 of 2 highest grades, so that's why that does what it does there. Fairly plentiful in like 6, 7, 8, close to, 5, 6, 7, more so than 8, but still. Super high grades of these still do good premiums. We have a Harry Kane PSA 10 pop 1 of 9 that goes for $420, along with a Zebra Messi from 2022 Select. Above that, we see another of these 2010 Panini stickers go for Messi. We keep seeing these. I don't know if this is just someone with a lot of them that's sort of just getting their money worth out of it, or if it's the same one getting relisted. To me, these always seem super high, just because it's sort of a random Messi. I know it's PSA 10, and people love PSA 10, but I'd rather have a PSA 9 of his 2006 World Cup card, at least to me. I don't know about you. I know the 2006 World Cup card's sort of more well-known and maybe seems more common, but even like these, it's just sort of a random year. This Bernabeu from 1919 goes for $432, and seemingly a pretty good deal because 2 of these have been sold prior. Both of those did nearly the same price, but both were lower grade. Whoever's selling these, they sold the lowest grade first, then the second lowest grade, then the third lowest grade. We'll see if any more come out. I don't know what the pop looks like on SGC Pop Reports, but this was a pretty good one. One of the ones before, had a pretty good chunk miss, and they both look pretty beat up, but this one's a good 2.5. It says Bernabeu rookie. I'm led to believe that that's true just because from what I can find before 1920, really hard to find anything in terms of Spanish releases, and I don't think I've seen anything else of his prior, so I'm going to go with it. If that's not true, do let me know. But Kylian Mbappe 2018 Laser, a 10 goes for $444. We have a PSA 5 R9 Football for $456 as well. This Panini Figo, I wanted to look it up just because we don't see Panini Figos all that often, so basically anytime we do, I just want to see what it's doing. And this was a really good sale. $456 on this one. Last PSA 6 did $324, so, that's pretty significant, I would say. This actually goes back to, sort of boom pricing. This is amongst the highest price ever, really, to be honest. There were some that were better. A PSA 4 up here, I guess, during 2022 did $588, so a little higher in 2022, but Figo stuff seemingly doing pretty good, and I would guess that, it's probably aided a lot by only 13 of these selling, and I would assume some of them are, duplicate sales, so, maybe 10 of these in total, so that seemed to have done pretty well. Beyond that, we have a PSA 5 Deportivo here for $504. I don't know, $150 over a 3. You probably pay it, I would think, but at the same time, these are hand cut, and paying premiums on hand cut's always a little weird, at least in my mind. 2017 Museum Mbappe goes for $516. A Dis Maradona goes for $516 here in a PSA 9, pretty good price there. We have a Pink Wave Florian Wirtz. I looked this up because we don't see much Florian Wirtz, and I was sort of interested in terms of what his stuff had done since the season they had last year and sort of how that worked out. So this one sold for $552. Last one did $449 fixed price. And I guess there was one before that, actually $600 fixed price. So this is in between. Decent sale, though. In the early parts of last year, there was a sale here on auction for $420. So up, 20, 30-ish% after what was a really, really good season. Feels more than deserved, I would say. I don't think people care too much about Bundesliga results. in terms of the overall hobby. It just doesn't really register, but I think that was a deserved uptick, and interested to see where that goes from here. We have the 2006 UK Traditions Messi that goes for $564. Again, not really sure how to feel about these. They've always been weird in my mind, as they were a 2004 labeled item for a while, and they just look so janky. I don't really know how to describe it, but if you just look at the back, like, it doesn't look very professional in terms of what you typically expect out of a more well-known release. I don't really know how to say it. They just look bootleg is the way I'd put it. And if people have more info on the release, would love to know. But I've always just sort of looked at them as if they were tainted and not really given much of a care. Like, again, I just think at this price point, they're just so expensive compared to what they are, from the sense that, like, you can get a PSA 9 2006 Panini World Cup card for $430. You can save yourself like $100 plus and get an actual good card. I don't know. I don't get them, but they still do good numbers because they've always sort of done good numbers because they were 2004, so people still treat them in an okay realm, I guess. The Xavi Flawless out of 25 goes for $600. Pretty fun one there. I mean, you got an A there. You got a decent auto. Stays almost, I think it's all on card, which for Xavi, sometimes difficult, but not a crazy price there at $600. Beyond that, we have a Maradona PSA 2, went for $750. I think this was a good deal. Comparatively, we don't see, a lot of good-looking Estampas. Typically, they look terrible, so I think that the eye appeal was deserved. I think it's better than top 30%. I don't think it's quite top 5 because of the centering, but the back looks super good. The front looks super good. I think $750 for a 2 there on that one was a good price for sure. We have a 58 Bremer Fakring Brazil team, PSA 6, that goes for $780. Another Lamine Yamal. I'm not really going to follow these too much more, but one did sell for $500, but then there was also one that sold for $2,500 that got relisted, so I'm not sure if this is a relist, if it already sold, I don't know. But 810 seemingly higher than the last sale, which is interesting, because I do wonder with Lamine Yamal if people are going to actually care about what he does this season, because with Barcelona, you're just not going to really do anything. Like, the ceiling's capped, at least in my mind. And so with that, unless he just goes absolutely off, it's going to be hard to maintain the hype as a hobby prospect. Just look at like Haaland and Mbappe, in the last year or so, it feels like they've sort of fallen off, despite Haaland having the best seasons of his career and getting all the trophies you could imagine, and Mbappe sort of cementing himself more so on the World Cup stage, presumably going to be the World Cup top all-time goal scorer, but who cares? Beyond that, Zebra Messi, I think we saw one of these go recently, not sure. 8.5 Zebra just sticks out, so I think we've seen that before, but we've seen a lot of the sort of striped cards go. BGS 10 here on the Sapphire. Interesting to see the premium that a pristine 10 gets, which is pretty decent. The PSA 10 went for like $300, so this is a good premium. Above that, a 2006 sticker goes for $810 and a PSA 10. These had always been closer to like 1,000. There would be sales that would be like 1,500, 2,000, but they always looked a little sus. So 1,000 was more so the price in my mind. So I think this is relatively cheap, but for a pretty plentiful sticker, of course, PSA 10 harder to get, but still 810 is a pretty good number. PSA 9 Bergman team photo, 870. We have a Messi Leaf patch auto for 930. Above that, we have the Father's Day Kylian Mbappe for 990 out of 50 and a PSA 9. We have a red 2014 Cristiano Ronaldo for just a tad under 1,000. Did want to take a peek at that, of course, because, a red Ronaldo 2014, how could you not? Last BGS 9.5 did 1,700, so I think a PSA 8 at that price is pretty good. If we go back even further, like last year I was looking, these have actually done really well. A BGS 9.5 on eBay had sold for $965 last year. Min Gem, it's got a 9 on corners, 9.5 elsewhere, but from 1,000 for a 9.5 up to 1,000 for a PSA 8, seems pretty good to me. I do think the red Ronaldo is sort of the go-to for Ronaldo, I would say. Of course, there are better, but until you hit like green crystals, I'm not really all that intrigued. But yeah, seems like a good price there. We have a 1920 Helvetia Sport Regalo here of Balancieri. This one goes for a little over 1,000. These are down a good bit just as more come to market. There was a huge Ferrari sale within this set, as far as I can tell, and so with that huge Ferrari sale, it brought a lot of these out. The first ones did closer to, I think, 2,000 to 3,000, and they've sort of come down more and more, but this is a pretty notable Italian pre-war player. I believe it is a rookie as well. Could be wrong on that, but I'm taking a leap. Nonetheless, pop 1 of 1, none higher, seems like a pretty good buy, at least relative to the other ones we've seen. And typically, when there's like waves of these big cards, they come in a wave and then they sort of dissipate pretty quick. So I'm not sure if this is going to dissipate quick. I'm not sure on the supply of that type of stuff, but if I don't see this for a long time, I wouldn't be surprised either. Then this row we have some goodies. 2017 Galactic Ronaldo BGS 9 goes for $1,050. I'm pretty familiar with these because I do like Galactics. People say I hate Modern. I do like Galactics, but I was sort of watching this. The last PSA 10 had sold for $5,000, so compared to this, it sort of makes sense. But the last BGS 9.5 sold for about the same price as this, so this was a pretty good sale. I think the BGS 9.5 was kind of light, and yeah, I mean, this wasn't 9. There was an 8 on the edges, which makes it, you know, a little tricky. I think I was looking down here, and like the bottom edge, you can kind of see a little something. Bleeds over to the back as well, but I thought it was a fair price. Pop 1 of 2 5 higher, so there are a decent amount of higher grades for this, which I think it makes sense at where it landed. Next to it, we have a 1965 Beckenbauer for $1,200 and a PSA 6. This is, of course, the Bergman. Going on over here, we have a couple sales prior that at least would indicate this is going in a good direction. The first one down here at $960, and then we have another one at $1,025, and then this one seems pretty good in terms of color. I'm not sure on the back. But this one goes for nearly $1,200. If we go all the way back to the beginning, it's not going to be good because the first sale on here is just an absolutely extraordinary number. PSA 6 during the boom, $24,000. PSA 6 now, $1,100. So, you know, quite the discount there. This is a card that's been hurt in terms of grading. I didn't look at the back of this one, but basically BGS is, not BGS, but PSA has done a really bad job at grading the backs. The card itself, of course, would have fallen as well. I'm not disputing that. This bag actually looks really clean, I will say. If the text is pretty clean, at least not really broken up by anything, then you can tell it's not a stuck copy, or at least feel pretty good about it. Corners are also a little worn here, which I always kind of like to see, just because if it was an unstuck copy, presumably that would be the case. But yeah, PSA has graded a ton of these where the back, like, you can clearly see missing pieces of paper or text or something like that, and those should be automatic 1s or 2s, but PSA will give it like an 8 or a 7, and because of that, there are really bad copies that end up getting sold really cheap, and I think it sort of hurts all the other copies in a sense, because they see those comps and they think they're real. Sort of akin to like the fake stickers for, say, Messi or Ronaldo, where the fake sales really suppress the real sales because people generally don't know the difference. 34 Vecchi Miazza, really, really nice looking one here, at least in terms of the photo. We saw one of these go last week. I can't remember who it was, but this is quite a beauty, and definitely the most important in terms of the players within the set. So pop 1 of 2 non-higher, PSA 8, again, super good grade there, at least, you know, relative to what we've seen elsewhere. I think I saw another one of these going in at like a 6 or something, so pretty cool to see that, and $1,300 there for the 34 Vecchi. Above that, we have a Topps Chrome 2017 Kylian Mbappe Refractor PSA 10. Took a peek at that just to see where it was at, and man, this graph really stuck out to me. You can't see it all there. Let me see if I can do a little something like that. There you go. Yeah, I mean, wow. So in terms of Mbappe, nearly the cheapest prices we've ever seen, and this is sort of something that just generally happens a lot in sports cards, is the thing that people think is going to happen doesn't happen, because too many people think it's going to happen, they're prepared for it. So people always thought when Mbappe moves to whoever it be, Real Madrid or other, his prices are going to boom. That was actually the lowest point ever for this card, was when he was moving to Real Madrid. And now if you look over the last, 6 months, it's actually sort of kicked back up. He went to Real Madrid, they bottomed out at nearly $1,000, and now this sale at $1,350, seemingly pretty good. I mean, if an auction sale's going at $1,350, maybe a bin goes for like $1,500, $1,600, maybe this is working its way back up. I don't know. All that to say, pretty interesting that basically this card has never been cheaper than it is right now, despite him sort of now being where people want him to be. Of course, I think people anticipated him leaving a bit sooner, but still, it's interesting because if this does turn the right way, it could really turn in favor of Mbappe being on Real Madrid, and with the players he is, it could really turn, but if it goes wrong, it could go really wrong. So I think it's a high risk, high reward. We then have a PSA 8 Thierry Henry from his rookie year of 96, and a PSA 8 going for $1,900. So looking on over at the price of Henry here, we have $1,890 for that sale. Before this, apparently there was a PSA 9 on eBay fixed price that did $9,000. You never know if those types of things are for sure or not, just because it seems so high, but at the same time, a 9 hasn't sold in forever, so who knows. When we look before that, though, we can see a 7 back here and an 8 as well, so it's actually up from the last 8 sale of $1,700, but the last PSA 7 was $1,500 on a best offer, so I wouldn't say it's a great price, but it is better than the last one and seemingly an okay price. Seems like an okay sale there, despite not being a mind-boggling price, at least upon first review. This one sort of was, just because I've never really seen it, I guess. There was one sale prior that we can find here, so this is a 57 Di Stefano Ediciones Deportivas. It has a sort of chocolate stamp on the front, which the other one in the sales history we're going to see does not. Typically just different chocolate manufacturers, they get these cards, they print, their stamp on it, usually on the back, but I guess this one's on the front. Last one in a 2.5 did 3,500, which is a absolutely sort of mind-blowing price just looking at this sale now, where a 4.5 does 1,890. I could only find one sale on Toto Coleccion, but I looked up this specific one. I don't think I even got this stamp though, but the only one I could find was in like 2020 for nearly $100, which was a pretty good price in 2020. And that one was also pretty beat. So that was probably like a 1, 2, something like that. This is a 4.5 that goes for a good premium over that. So pretty fun Di Stefano there. This Panini Pele 2014 Prism PSA 10, at least to me, seemed pretty light. And once we go look at comps, it pretty much was. Last PSA 8 did 1,200 here, and this one does 2,200 last night. So I don't know, I guess, would you rather have an authentic card with a PSA 10 auto or a PSA 10 card with no auto grade? Personally, I'd go with a PSA 10 with no auto grade, especially if the auto looks like this. Like, I could understand if it was off sticker and stuff, but this looks like a 10 auto to me. So I feel like this is probably a pretty good price. I mean, compared to an authentic auto 10, I mean, that auto looks about the same, and, the card's only authentic, so I would take the PSA 10 card, I think, pretty simply. When we look before that, I mean, even back here in August, there was an authentic auto 10. I'm not sure if that's a relist or not. Yeah, I mean, it says PSA sold both of these. Let's just look. 502 and 502. So yeah, that's the same one, but second time, presumably it's sold for a more realistic price. Nonetheless, I mean, even back here, like a BGS 9 went for 1,500, 10 auto. I guess it sort of makes sense the more you put it together, but yeah, I mean, during the boom, these were pretty big. I mean, even in 2022, when things were kind of falling, a PSA 10 at Pele was like $3,000 to $5,000 at times. So yeah, down a good bit. And I mean, to me, I think this is a good deal. It's not something I bought. It's not really something I'm going after. At least from my perspective, Leaf autos for Pele go for like $300 to $400 basically every day of the week. So I think that seems cheap. Beyond that, 1964 George Best PSA 6 goes for $3,500. Look this one up because, pretty good grade. It's, I'd say towards the higher end of the grades, but still probably in the middle a bit. Nonetheless, this 6 goes for $3,500. Last 5 did $1,400, so that seems like a good boost over that. And the PSA 5 before that did $2,100. So these have been falling a little bit, but that seemed to have been a pretty good sale last night. And we're pretty high on the list already, but we still have 9 more to go. So in this row, we have a PSA 10 out of 10 red 2019 color match, all that good stuff of Lionel Messi that goes for $38.40, pop 1 of 1. Seemingly a pretty good price there, I would say. I'm sort of, comparing to 2017 Topps Chrome Messi reds and what those typically go for. This is a 10, so it's going to get a higher price. I sort of get that. I guess how much of a multiple, can be debated. I think in this scenario, you're buying the card more so than the grade, but the grade definitely still matters. Beyond that, we have a BGS 9 Ronaldo here, which goes for $4,300. To me, this was super strong, I thought, just knowing the sticker pretty well. PSA 9s last sold for $4,000 to $5,000. And typically BGS stickers get a pretty decent discount. Now, this is a real one. The ways you can know, one, if it is 12 million ... or earlier, you're fine. Once it's in 13 million, that's when the fakes sort of started coming in. Beyond that, you have to look at sort of the colors. The colors on this look really good, just generally speaking. They look pretty vibrant. There is a darker printing version where it's actually even more saturated, and that one's authentic as well. But there is a very light printed version that just looks disgusting, kind of, and BGS graded a ton of them. So typically BGS labs get a discount, but given that this is a real one, it actually gets a seemingly fair price, which doesn't happen a lot. Even the real ones typically in BGS labs go unnoticed. And yeah, $4,300 here, I mean, just a huge price. People also worry about from time to time the waviness of BGS stickers, but this one seems fairly straight. Usually you can just look down the line, and if it's a little wavy, it'll show in the edges, but not bad here. So beyond that, we have something that definitely isn't going up, and that's this 1958 / really 1960 Tupinamba. As you can see earlier, PSA graded as 58, 59. I think at one point it was just 58. I could be wrong on that. But this was seen as a Pele rookie for the longest time and no longer is, so it has taken quite a beating. We'll talk more about that in a second because there's actually a higher grade above this, but this one goes for $4,800. Typically, ones have been about $1,000 to $2,000 for a long time, so this is a pretty low price comparatively. Scrolling up above it, so this one, I mean, two sort of head scratchers here, I would say, in this row. 2003 Upper Deck, Cristiano Ronaldo, PSA 10, actually SGC 10 with the NBA gold sticker, all that good stuff. Goes for nearly $5,000, pop 1 of 1 in SGC pop. to me just seems super, super strong. I mean, it is super strong, 5K for Ronaldo. Base card second year. It's a good number, especially when Upper Deck, there's a few different Ronaldos in this set. The SP Authentic set is also 2003, 2004 as far as I'm aware, and that has more base cards, it has more numbered stuff. This has numbered stuff. It's just a lot, especially in a set where, again, there's multiple base cards, there's numbered stuff. There's just a lot of other options, but during the boom, these were really, really strong in terms of pricing. Like, the base cards in PSA 10 were as high as like 15 to 20,000 from what I remember. And so this is definitely still down a lot, but at the same time, knowing what I know now, they still seem super strong, and especially this sale. I'm sure it's helped by the Pop 1 of 1 SGC, the Gold NBA, it's got so much on it. To me, that's sort of an interesting one. The 78 crack as well, another interesting one, but for a different reason. When we look here, I sort of mentioned it last week, but something else was mentioned in the Vintage Discord. If you like vintage, they also talk about other stuff, but mostly vintage. Do check that out in the description below. There's a Discord for it. Always a fun time. But on the back of this, yeah, there's sort of, this weird stuff going on the top edge, but also maybe this mark here, which could be glue. At least it has been speculated. Beyond that, though, the front of the card scares me a little bit. I guess when we just look here, it does look really good. It's well-centered. It's got great color. But when stuff is really well-centered in vintage, that's always sort of, ringing some alarm bells for me. So looking back at the sales here, this actually shows me that this is a much higher sale, at least relatively to what I thought it was. A 3 went for $780 recently, and a 2 went for $480. Now, they're not exactly the same grades, but they should be somewhat close, or at least in the same ballpark. They are not at all. I want to take a peek here and just look at some borders, which is kind of my main concern. Again, like I said, just because when all of the edges are basically equal, that's just the first alarm bell, especially when the top edge looks really weird like this, and just, there's so many things. I guess if you were trimming it, maybe you trim the top edge as well and get that off. I'm not sure. I guess maybe if you cut too thin, though, it could look really bad. But when you compare like this 3 here, I mean, sure, this edge is really short on the bottom, but the right edge is pretty short, but the left edge is pretty big to make up for that. Like, the other edges have a lot going on if one of them's short, right? Obviously, that's going to happen if it's off-center, but notably, there's a lot of white space on these edges. Even if it's off-center, there's still a lot of white space. I mean, this is decent. Of course, the left edge was really small, but there's just a lot of white space, generally. I mean, this, again, off-center, but tons of white space. And on this 2.5, again, tons of white space. The right's a little big, I guess, relative to some of the others, but it just looks so clean that, at least to me, between how good the centering is and how little white space I'm seeing, I just don't feel good that that's a truly, truly authentic with no alterations type of sticker. Maybe it is. If you have any insight, would love to know down below, but yeah, to me, I mean, I think that's a super strong price, especially for the sticker itself. I think that there's some, things to be questioned, both the centering, the edges, and the back. I think there's a lot of things that maybe make that not a PSA 5. Nonetheless, gets a pretty strong price. Then we have a 2004 Panini Este Messi that goes for $6,600. I actually didn't look this one up. Yeah, last PSA 9 best offer on eBay in July did $4,300. One before that was $5,000, $3,600, $3,600, $5,000. So yeah, some low prices in there, and this one is quite a high one. Now, of course, it has the NBA sticker as well, which how much does that add? I don't know. PSA is actually grading this again, so we'll see how that sort of plays out if a lot more come to market. We haven't seen really many of these sell, at least on PWCC, in quite a while, /Fanatics. And then we find ourselves into the top 3 for the week. So this is the higher grade of the Tupinambas that I was mentioning earlier, and this has the change slip where it is instead at 1960. So this is sort of the important reason why it has fallen off in terms of the key Pele's. Still a really nice looking Pele though, I will say that. It's one of my favorites in terms of aesthetics and just overall design from early Pele, but sort of gives me Cruyff Vanderhoot vibes from the 70s, but yeah, super high grade there. PSA 6, really, really stunning copy. Goes for nearly $7,000. When we look back on past sales, basically the ones that we'll find were pretty expensive. Notably, the one at least, here's two, $18,000 and $15,000 more during the boom. This one being $6,900, quite a dip. 60-70%, which I guess for certain things isn't all that uncommon. But for this one, at least notably, in March of 2020, this had sold for $10.6K, and there's not a lot of things that are down 30-40% from early 2020, this being one of them. And yeah, this is basically all narrative-based, and especially noteworthy is the year change that has sort of made all this happen. So when I first got into the hobby, this was like the Pele, and one that I had considered buying. I hadn't known a lot about soccer cards at the time, but I was like, well, a Pele rookie obviously is, one of the choices. But yeah, I'm happy I didn't make it, because I knew at the time I didn't know enough but that hasn't stopped me before, so luckily it did that time. Nonetheless, we move on to a 2004 71 bis Messi that goes for $7,800 in a PSA 8. This is a pretty good sale. When we look at the all-time, I mean, basically you can see that this is one of, if not the highest sales since, into 2020. I mean, nearly May of 2022, so this one has come back a good bit. The lowest point being at 4,700, and also a low sale recently at 5,400. This is sort of, I would say, mostly impacted by the PSA 9 sale that had happened recently, where this went up to 50,000. Now, I'm always really uncomfortable by sales that go from 30 to 50, especially when a lot have been selling and there's just sort of a massive spike. So to me, that's something that, we need to keep more eyes on, see if more sell for a higher price than that, or if they start to fall a lot. Like if the next sale goes for 30, I'd almost just wipe that one out completely in my head. But I thought this was already sort of roaring anyways. I mean, 31 was high compared to 17. It had already almost doubled before this, where it almost doubles again. So yeah, I mean, over the last year, up 127%, if that sale's legitimate. If it isn't, I don't know, but it was still up like 40% going into that. And yeah, over the last 2 years, up 125%, and of course, all the time you get that graph. So, and then finally, we have the 2021 Paper Dasha Cristiano Ronaldo 101 with Topps Chrome. This in a PSA 10 goes for $12,000, and yeah, there was one prior sale of this same exact card, presumably went unpaid 3 months ago for like $14,000 to $15,000. So I always find that interesting. Part of the reason I become concerned with some of these, very low numbered cards. Everyone loves low numbered cards because they can sort of control the price. And when people's main concern of why they're buying something is controlling the price of it, that leads to bad things just generally. Maybe that's what happened here. I'm not quite sure. But down from the last sale, presumably a non-paid listing. $12,000 for a 1/1 Cristiano Ronaldo. Still a good bit. I mean, it is Topps Chrome, it is Manchester United kit, so it's got some appeal for sure. But yeah, interesting to see that one go, and looking towards next week. Starting up top and working our way down, we have a PSA 10 of the number 35 Mega Christ, already almost, I mean, gosh, with buyer's premium, this is nearly 13,000. That's up quite a bit. I don't know where this one bottomed out at, but I know 10s of his rookies in general were as low as like 5,000 to 7,000. This one seemingly already pretty high. PSA 8 as well for Messi, already pretty high. Now, I do think something that's important to note with these that are already super high is like, most of the time, if you really want a card, you're gonna bid at the end because you don't want people to know what you're bidding, right? When a card's super, super expensive off the rip on a relatively common card like this, it makes me think a lot of people have a vested interest in, putting it that high. So just something of note. Beyond that, like here, we have a yellow name, PSA 6 Eusebio, pop 1 of 2, none higher. People are still bidding that up though, 2,800 there. We have a gold Erling Haaland, a gold treble Ronaldo, along with PSA 4 Heinerle, PSA 5 Vecchi. We have a PSA 7 blue and red back Pele, which is going to be interesting to see how that does. And yeah, some good odd and ends throughout the rest of it, but should be a fun one. Hopefully you're excited. But yeah, that's going to be it for today. So again, if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. I'd appreciate it greatly. If you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. Anything you thought in terms of high sales, low sales, maybe something you snagged, would love to hear about it down below. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.